Good morning, Royal We Fellowship. Good morning. Good morning, Royal We Fellowship. How is everybody doing this morning? It's good to be here with you, and Shabbat Shalom. Happy Saturday. Happy end of the week. We are here to worship and to learn some insightful things from the ancient literature of the Bible, from the Old Testament. We are studying, and I'm so happy to see all of you here. I'm really excited about this message because today we are going to put a lot of things together that we have seen in the experience of the life of Joseph and the pain that he experienced, the narcissistic abuse that he experienced by his family, and the moment in his life where it all makes sense. And so I'm excited to share this with you. Before we get into this message, I just want to welcome you who are new to Royal We Fellowship. I want to thank those of you who are returning. I'm so happy that you all are here with me as we worship together, as we learn some new things together. If you would like to support Royal We Fellowship, you are more than welcome to. There are links down in the description box where you can offer your donation support. It's not required, but if you are inspired to help out, that would be helpful. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and feel free to share with people who you know and who you love. Let's go ahead and open up in prayer and then get into this message today. Our Father, who art in heaven, how holy is your name, and your kingdom will come, and your will shall be done here on this earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from the evil that's in this world. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. And everybody says, amen. I got a little tongue-tied there in our prayer this morning. But nonetheless, we are going to go ahead and get on with today's message. Now, we have been studying Joseph, and this is a very interesting story because Joseph is the result, and we see the narcissistic abuse. We see the same spirit that operated in the spirit of Cain way back in the beginning, right? With Cain and Abel. Cain rose up and killed his brother Abel out of a fit of jealous rage. And then we also see when it comes time to Joseph, now Joseph was, I wouldn't say favored by his father Israel, who is also Jacob, by the way. But there's a dearness towards Joseph, possibly some favor, because Joseph was a miracle child, if you will. Jacob's wife, Rachel, if you remember, she wasn't able to have children for the longest time. Jacob's wife, Rachel, wasn't able to have children for the longest time. So Jacob had children with Leah, Rachel's sister, and with the servants. So he had all these children, but none with the woman whom he loved, which was Rachel. Finally, God opened Rachel's womb, and Joseph was born. And then after that, again, for Joseph's younger brother, Benjamin. Benjamin's going to become a huge part in this story in a little bit. But so from that, Jacob had a fondness towards Joseph, being the firstborn between him and Rachel. Now, as we know, the brothers who were stepbrothers, half-brothers, whatever you want to refer to them, were jealous of Joseph because of the fondness that their father Jacob had. And the brothers conspired against Joseph because Joseph had a dream. In Joseph's dream, and he was in power. Joseph's dream had to do with wheat, a sheaf of wheat, if you recall, from Genesis chapter 37. They bowed down. And we're going to talk more about that. But the brothers conspired to kill Joseph. And some of them said, let's not kill him. Let's not do that. Let's throw him in a pit. Threw him in a pit. Joseph goes off to slavery into Egypt, crying and screaming and in pain because of the narcissism in his brothers. The same narcissism that killed Abel, that was in Cain, got rid of Joseph. All right? Time has passed. Joseph has changed. And in Joseph's slavery in Egypt, he's actually become an Egyptian. He knows nothing about the ways of his family anymore. He's also suffered at the hands of narcissistic abuse by Potiphar, not Potiphar, by the wife of, that's right, Potiphar. Was it Potiphar? I believe it was Potiphar. He suffered at the, the second in command of Pharaoh. He was a servant, and the second in command's wife liked Joseph, and he suffered abuse there as well, was thrown into prison again. Yet, God once again worked, gave Joseph dreams, got him out of the prison. And so here we are, that after Joseph was taken out of the prison, the Pharaoh allowed Joseph, or called Joseph, to be now the new second in command and the governor over all the land, because there was a great famine. The dreams that God gave Joseph was real. And Pharaoh, and so Joseph is now living in this new life, being second in command under Pharaoh, and he's feeding all of the people based on the dream that he had, that there would be a great famine and that it would be needed, that this food would be needed. And so we're going to pick up in Genesis chapter 42 here. This is Joseph's new life, and this is where we're also going to see forgiveness. And this message is going to be about the moment when forgiveness is going to hit you. Because I believe in this message, we see the moment when forgiveness actually hit Joseph, and we're going to see why. In fact, in the scriptures, it tells us why forgiveness for Joseph's brothers, for the horrible thing they did, we're going to see exactly how and why forgiveness was able to enter into Joseph. So follow with me, Genesis chapter 42, verse 1. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep staring at each other?" He continued, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some food for us so that we may live and not die." So based on the last chapter, we know that this famine is actually taking place. A famine has stricken the land of Egypt, not only Egypt, but the surrounding areas. So the famine is widespread. It's almost like the pandemic that we're experiencing today. It's everywhere, right? This is what the famine was like. And it's interesting, we see Jacob here, we see his sarcasm to his sons as he's saying, why are you standing around staring at each other? We see that one of the things about narcissism, now keep in mind the brothers, the sons of Jacob, threw Joseph in a pit. Something about the narcissism keeps narcissists in this place of really not having a whole lot of trying to find the right word for it, but making the right decisions. And we see that Jacob here is almost annoyed by the fact that he's sarcastic towards his sons in such a way, right? Stop looking at each other and go get some food. We see that there has been a history now of these sons almost just not being very good, not being very quick to make good decisions. And this is the truth with narcissists. When you start to do bad things in life to bad people, whether you believe it or not, whether narcissists know it, and some of you might be looking at narcissistic people saying they have everything, they have the life I want. They don't. They're actually making horrible decisions nonstop. And this is one of the things that we have to understand. It's obvious that Jacob has lived this life with his sons, seeing and witnessing that they're really good for nothing almost, as he sarcastically has to point out here, listen, we're all dying here. You're standing around staring at each other. I heard there's food in Egypt. Go get some so we don't die. He had to use sarcasm to really say, you guys are good for nothing. And what Jacob still doesn't understand is that it's those sons who lied and got rid of their youngest brother, Joseph. That sin, that evilness has corrupted them, the narcissism in them so much that they're viewed as being good for nothing. So this is important for you to understand. The narcissists in your life, those who've hurt you, have gotten away with nothing. And though it may appear that they have everything, they really are it's going to weigh them down. Their sins will catch up with them. They're going to come across as good for nothing. It's going to stack up against them. Now, so Jacob uses this passive aggressiveness against his son. So you can see he still has contempt. Jacob has contempt for his sons in his life. Verse 3, then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others because he was afraid that harm might come to him. Benjamin, keep in mind, this is important to understand this about Benjamin. Benjamin is the youngest brother, and he's also the biological brother of Joseph. Benjamin was the only other son born to both Jacob and Rachel. So that makes Benjamin just as Joseph has just as much of a fondness to Benjamin as he did Joseph, if this makes sense to you. And so he didn't want Benjamin to go. He says, Benjamin is the only brother I have, or the only son I have left with Rachel. I don't want to lose him too. I lost Joseph. Okay, I lost Joseph. Jacob is still under the impression that Joseph is gone because of what his brothers told Jacob, that he was mauled by an animal. All right, so he didn't want Benjamin to go. Benjamin is Joseph's biological brother, the youngest son, the only other son between Jacob and Rachel. And so we see that same fondness Joseph has for Rachel, or Jacob has for Rachel, and for the fact that her having children, right? It goes back to understanding that it was a miracle for Jacob to see Rachel having children. Again, this goes back to the fact that Jacob really loved Rachel, wanted to marry Rachel, but God wouldn't let her have children. Okay, so he has these two. Verse 5, so Israel's sons, Israel is Jacob, were among those who went to buy grain, for there was a famine in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph, at this point in time, Joseph, young Joseph, the Joseph that was thrown in the pit by his brothers, the Joseph that was thrown in the prison in Egypt, this Joseph, this same Joseph, is now the governor of Egypt. The governor, the second in command. As a matter of fact, Pharaoh told Joseph, he said this, only under my throne will you not be over everything. Basically, he's saying, look, there's me, I'm the Pharaoh, and then there's you, Joseph, then there's you. You're right there. He is the governor of Egypt. And everybody all over the famine-stricken world is going to Egypt to get food, to get grain because of the pandemic, because of the famine. All right, now watch this. Now Joseph was the governor of all the land, the person who sold grain to all of its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces in the ground. So the brothers, Joseph's brothers, made their way from Canaan, and they immediately see the governor of Egypt, and this is how they recognize him. It's the governor of Egypt, and they bowed down to him with their faces in the ground, to the governor of Egypt. Now, this was in fact Joseph's dream, if you recall. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 37 and reread Joseph's dream. Joseph had a dream. Genesis 37, verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him at that time. But here was his dream. Verse 6, he said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. And his brothers said to him, do you really think you're going to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. They hated him. And it was for that reason that they threw him in a pit. They went into narcissistic rage out of their envy, because Joseph at that time, their younger brother, didn't look like a ruler. He was their younger brother. And his brothers in their narcissistic rage were saying, look at this punk kid thinking he's better than us. They threw him in a pit. They made up a story that he was dead. They pained their own father. They put Joseph through a nightmarish, hellish experience. But at this moment in time, his brothers now were in fact bowing down to Joseph, not knowing it was Joseph. They were bowing down to the governor of Egypt. His brothers surrounded him, bowing down to him. The narcissists were bowing down to Joseph. Now watch this. As soon as Joseph, verse 7, as soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them. Joseph knew who they were, but they did not know who Joseph was. We're back in chapter 42, by the way. So as soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger, it says in verse 7. And he spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? He asked. What do you want? He spoke harshly to him. He did not want to let them to know that it was Joseph. And what's interesting about this also, we're going to find out, is Joseph, he has now been in Egypt for a long time, 14 plus years. For all practicality, he is Egyptian. He speaks Egyptian, right? He walks like an Egyptian. Walk like an Egyptian. Joseph has become an Egyptian, so his brothers wouldn't recognize him. Egyptians were also known for their fancy headpieces, for their makeup. Even the guys would wear certain types of makeup as far as their status is concerned. The Pharaoh wore makeup. It's an indication, much like the clothes, much like the ranks and the badges and things that we wear and we often see on uniforms. Makeup, the way in which they dressed themselves in Egypt was their status, was their rank. There was no way they could recognize it was Joseph that they were bowing down to. To them, they were bowing down to the Lord over them, the governor of Egypt, the one who would make the decision on whether or not their family would get food or not. And it just so happened to be Joseph. Joseph recognized his brothers in verse 8, but they did not recognize him. This is the most important thing for those of you. You want to know the point where you are going to heal from narcissistic abuse. You want to know the moment where it all makes sense. This is the moment that Joseph had. And I believe this is the moment where true forgiveness and compassion and empathy enters into Joseph's life. But at the same time, Joseph is going to make sure that the shift of power, if you will. Verse 8, although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then, in verse 9, it says, then he remembered his dreams about them. Now, a lot of people, and I've never heard this taught, and I've never heard this talked about, but this is important. Verse 9 says, Joseph remembered his dreams about them. What dreams? What dreams did Joseph have about his brothers? That goes back to when Joseph was a child. Joseph, at this very moment, as he's looking at his brothers bowing down before him, not knowing it's him, but his brothers are bowing down before him. Why are his brothers bowing down? Because he's the governor of Egypt at this point in time. Joseph remembers the dream when he was younger. Let's go back and read the dream again. The dream is found in Genesis 37, verse 5. Joseph had a dream. He told it to his brothers. They were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly Joseph's sheaf stood up while the sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Joseph, at this point in time, it all made sense. It clicked. Joseph now knows that God used evil of his brothers to make the dream come true. Joseph knows now that the dream he had of ruling over his brothers required everything that transpired against Joseph to get him to the point, to get him to become the ruler, the governor of Egypt. As he's standing there watching his brothers bow down before him, it made sense. Listen, something that you and I need to understand here. This is the moment where forgiveness enters in towards narcissistic abuse, especially when you use that pain, when that pain drives you, when it moves you forward in life, when you become who you're called to be because of it. And then, and only then, when you stand and you realize, oh my gosh, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the evil actions that I experienced in life from other people. And this is now why they're bowing before me. This is now why, because I am the governor of Egypt. This is what needed to happen in order for me to get in this position in life. And I'm not saying that you're going to become a governor of Egypt. I'm not saying you're going to become the president of the United States. I'm not saying, but at some level in your life, the pain that you experienced is going to drive you into another area of life. You're going to come to a different place in your life because of narcissistic abuse. And only at that point, there's going to come a moment where it's going to snap. Something is going to make sense in your life, and you're going to be like, this is what I was supposed to do. This is where I'm supposed to be. And at that moment, forgiveness, true forgiveness comes in because you see that a part of this was required. And I know this is difficult because we don't want to look at any narcissistic abuse or evil in our lives as being required at all. We hate that idea, don't we? I know I did. Why does it have to be this way? Why does family members have to be abusive? Why do people have to be so mean? But here I am talking with you right now, and I would not even be here before you without the evil that I experienced in my personal life. Me, Kevin, does this make any sense to you? I would not be here right now. Allow this to sink in for a moment. And some of you are saying, I don't have that, and I'm not doing any. Not yet, but don't rule it out. As a matter of fact, continue to allow the pain that you've experienced, continue to process it. Don't ignore it, and don't try to overshadow it with promises that have been given to you, but process it. Process it. Let that pain, let the understanding of evil in this world, whether it's from your family, your ex-spouse, your ex-boyfriend, your own sisters, your own brothers, Joseph's brothers, his own brothers, threw him in a pit as he was crying and screaming and begging and confused. Why would family hate me so much that they would get rid of me? But now, as he stands before his brothers and they're bowing down to him because his brothers see him as governor, now it makes sense to Joseph. The way they were going to bow down, I remember the dream I had, they were bowing down. They wouldn't be bowing down to me if I wasn't the governor of Egypt. How did I get to be the governor of Egypt? Well, first my brothers had to get rid of me. That was the only way. Now then, what's interesting about this, Joseph now, his dream has been fully realized. His dream in his youth of being a ruler over his brothers and over everyone. If you remember young Joseph's dreams, it wasn't just his brothers bowing down. In his dreams in his youth, he said, he basically declared all things were going to bow down. And in this case, all things are. Everybody who wants to live is going to Egypt and going to Joseph for food for their survival. And everybody goes and bows down at the lordship of Joseph because Joseph is the one who decides who gets to eat and who doesn't. This would not have happened. Joseph wouldn't have been in this position had not his brothers sold him to Egypt to begin with. And I'm not saying it excuses the narcissism. I'm not saying it excuses the evil. All I'm telling you is that at some point in our lives, we're going to reach this point where things make sense when we are who we are called to become, and we realize the evil we've had to face in order to get there. We can not excuse evil. We still need to call evil out. However, we can understand it and have compassion to the point where we don't need to be evil anymore, where we don't need to seek revenge, where we understand our place and the place evil played in our lives to get us to our place. Now, watch this. At this point, I believe, and as it's written, Joseph recognized his brothers, then he remembered his dreams about them. My interpretation is that it was at this moment, as Joseph remembered his dreams, that true forgiveness entered his heart. True compassion and true mercy entered his heart because of his position, because of what God has done in his life. Now watch this. Out of his true compassion, I believe now Joseph began to play with his brothers. It says this in verse 9 as it continues. It says, then Joseph remembered his dream about them, and then he said, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected. Joseph now, I believe, goes into character mode. He doesn't yet want his brothers to know who he is. He wants to play him for a little while. Now, he's not playing them out of anger and hatred and revenge. Why? Because Joseph remembered his dream. Joseph now knows true forgiveness. He now knows his position in life over his brothers. He now knows all the stuff we just talked about, but he's playing with them. Why? Why? Joseph is now playing them not out of anger, not out of frustration, or even revenge. He's playing them to test their hearts. Now Joseph is in a position to test their hearts, test their repentance, and test their current nature. Are you the same people that you were when you threw me in a pit? Joseph needs to know this, and this is important for you and me. Why does Joseph need to know this? Because Joseph is in a position now where he's Egyptian. Even though they're his brothers, Joseph gets to make the decision now as to whether or not he wants his brothers and his father and the family that he came from, if he even wants them in their life, because he doesn't have to even associate with them. Joseph, looking like an Egyptian, walking like an Egyptian, talking like an Egyptian. He's an Egyptian. He's married now. He's an Egyptian. He's the governor of Egypt. Why would he want to go back to even his own father, Jacob? Why? He has no need. He has everything in his life. All of his needs are now met. And so he's playing them. Joseph is now playing the narcissists. Not pretending to be a narcissist. He's playing them in his power over them. Not out of anger, not out of frustration, not out of revenge. He's playing them to test whether or not they can have a place in his life, whether or not they can associate. And when you and I, you want to know if you or when you can ever be involved with narcissistic people who have hurt you, it's in that moment where you realize who you are, you're living your purpose, and then you can play them in a way that tests their heart to see if it's okay, if it's safe, or if it's toxic. If, out of playing them, what Joseph is doing, if it shows and reveals that they are the same people, then Joseph will never need to take his face paint off. He won't need to take his head garment off. He won't need to reveal that it's Joseph. He will simply allow them to continue to believe that he is just the governor of Egypt, and he will give them their food, take their money, and send them home. And they will continue to live their lives believing that Joseph is dead, and Joseph will continue to live his life as an Egyptian. So this is the decision that Joseph needs to make at this point, not out of anger, but just out of, should I reveal to them? Should I let my family know that I'm alive? I could, but I need to test if they're the same people or not. If they're the same people, there's no way. I'll continue to be an Egyptian. They can go on. I'll give them their food. We'll never cross paths again. So this is why Joseph's playing them. Joseph is doing this out of wisdom to see if he can reveal himself, to reassociate with them. Joseph is in more power here than just giving food to them. He has been given the authority to determine whether or not he's even related to them. Is he not in this power? They don't recognize him. At this point, he looks Egyptian, talks Egyptian, and walks like an Egyptian. At some point, you and I, in our healing journey, there's going to be a few things that take place. One, you're going to have the true forgiveness, and it's going to be when it all makes sense as to what that evil purpose had in your life. And then when you have that, if these people, whether it's family members, mom or dad, if they're trying, if you cross paths again, you're going to know true power and the true authority by you being the one who makes the decision on whether or not you reveal the possibility of a new life with them, or whether or not you continue to stay away from them. It's not about revenge. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about forgiveness and the shift of authority. Joseph could give them food and say goodbye forever, never acknowledging the truth. Right? No, my Lord, verse 10 says they answered, your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies. And I am sure while Joseph is hearing this, your servants are honest men, not spies. I'm sure Joseph is cringing. Oh, you little liars. You're honest men, are you? You have no idea who you're standing before. I know better. And I believe that it was taking a lot of Joseph to maintain going, oh man, so far you're striking out, dudes. I'm trying to see if you've changed at all. And you're showing me so far that you have not. You're still liars. So Joseph fires back. And again, not out of anger or frustration, because Joseph's beyond that. He's had the realization of the need of that evil to allow him to become the governor of Egypt. But Joseph's still playing them. He's reaching. He's reaching into the narcissistic hearts of these people by playing them. He's saying in verse 12, no, he said to them, you have come to see where our land is unprotected. You're spies. He's playing with them. You're spies. You came here to spy. Verse 13, but they replied, your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man who lived in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more. They're talking about Joseph. So what they're doing, what Joseph is doing, is putting them in a position to prove who they are, because Joseph has that power. Who are you? Why are you here in Egypt? What do you want? He's playing them, right? To get answers. He's digging in their hearts for truth. He's trying to find whether or not they're capable of telling the truth, because he knows that his brothers have been living lies. So he's digging, and he's digging it by accusing them. You're spies. And he's making them say, no, we're not spies. We're just a family. Our father's Jacob. We're 12 sons. One of them is our youngest. He's still with our father. And one of our brothers is no more. Talking about Joseph. And Joseph said to them in verse 14, it is just as I told you. You are spies. And this is how you will be tested. He's testing them. He's playing them. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brothers. The rest of you will be kept in prison so that your words may be tested to see if you are telling the truth. If you are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies. And he put them all in custody for 3 days. So now Joseph has imprisoned his own brothers. And again, I believe this is not out of anger or frustration, but this is out of Joseph's wisdom at this point to find out if his brothers are changing or are willing to change their lying nature, their attitudes, whether or not they're willing to come clean about what they've done, about the fact that they got rid of their youngest brother. If you notice, they answered Joseph by saying, one of our brothers is no more. Talking about Joseph. He didn't say why. He just said, one of them's no more. So they had been living the entire time, 14 years, never coming clean about what they did to Joseph. They have kept it a secret in their lives. Their father Jacob doesn't know the truth. Nobody knows the truth, but Joseph, in his wisdom, right now as the governor of Egypt, is digging in that place, challenging them, saying you're going to have to come clean if we're ever going to have a relationship. And this is what's going on. Again, it's not out of anger. It's not out of frustration. It's out of Joseph being able to determine whether or not he can associate with these people or give them food, send them home, and never have anything to do with them. So I'm going to end it right there because there was an awful lot this morning that we can learn from. And I know that I learned a lot just from this scripture, because one of the questions that we all have coming out of narcissistic abuse is, when will we have that true forgiveness? When can we deal with them? When will the shift of authority take place? And I believe the shift of authority happens, number one, understand Joseph was in all kinds of pain for a long time. He suffered in Egypt. He was in jail a lot of the times. He had a lot of isolation, a lot of alone time. Not only was, and he was thrown in the pit by his brothers. A lot of pain, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and pain made Joseph who he is now, which is the governor over Egypt, to where everybody's bowing down to him. This goes to the thought that, listen, no good position in life comes free of pain. Am I right? Listen, if you think that you're going to be somewhere in life without experiencing pain, blood, sweat, and tears, you're wrong. And for many of us, we need to have an understanding that narcissistic abuse, in a lot of ways, is a part of the blood, sweat, and tears to get us where we need to be in life. And yes, we can be mad and angry, and we're going to have a period of resentment. But when we heal and when we realize the necessity of us being who we're called to be, that's when we start to allow forgiveness to come in. But it takes us getting to that place. And then we have that aha moment. I wouldn't be here had it not been for that evil experience. If we don't experience evil, if we don't experience malevolence, then how do we know what good we have to offer and to experience in this life? Because we live in a world where we are faced with both. We are faced with malevolence and evil, and we are faced with good. As a matter of fact, this goes back to Deuteronomy, where God said, I call all of heaven and earth as a witness against you, you and me, that I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live. So yes, we are being watched by God. Yes, all of heaven is a witness against us. Yes, God and all of heaven has seen the abuse and the horrible things that you have experienced. And yes, God is saying, I've laid it out before you. How would you know it exists if you did not experience it face to face? How do you truly know the devil exists if you do not dance with him? Unfortunately, for a lot of us, some people out there can hear about the devil and learn about it and stay away. That's good. I wasn't able to. Many of you weren't able to. It wasn't until we spent time dancing with the devil that we go, oh my goodness, this is real. Because it burned bad. Right? Part of the journey to get you where you need to be in life. And then when you're at this place, you have a different perspective. Now you realize the truth. You realize who you are. And then you also realize your authority. Joseph realized his authority. Now he's in the position to make a decision. Do I associate with these people or not? They are no longer my family. They are no longer my brothers at this moment. Why? Because Joseph is saying, I am the governor of Egypt. Now, I don't need to be reconciled. I don't need to be family with these people anymore. I have a new family. They're called the Egyptians. But to give them an opportunity, Joseph is now playing his brothers to see if it's possible to reveal himself. With that, we're going to wrap it up. I hope that this message has blessed many of you. It's been a blessing for me. I'd like to remind you once again that you are welcome to donate to Royal We Fellowship. It's not required, but inspired. You can do so through PayPal links down below. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a very blessed weekend. There will be videos on Royal We throughout this next week, and we will be back here next Saturday morning, next Shabbat, for Royal We Fellowship. Have a blessed weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.